And here I'm sharing with you my screen. Can you see it? Okay. Let's begin now. Hello, everybody. So today is day 2 in Western thought and culture. And as you know, this is a very important course in English department, and I assume that if it's translated, it's also very important for all university students to be taken.
يعطيك العافية دكتورة.
أهلا Dana. Now we have Dana now to be an assistant. She is my assistant, as she proposed last time. She will be the one who is responsible for everything, including the WhatsApp group. We've made a WhatsApp group for you to make it easier. And also we have 2 other groups, one on Facebook group, which is called Western Thought and Culture. And we have also, and she will be working on uploading all the material to be used in this course, okay, or discussed in this course. So you will have it also, if it's a video, you can find it here. You just, if you want, of course, this is up to you. You just add, subscribe to my channel on YouTube with my name, okay? And of course, you'll have different videos. Forget about videos that are not related to your topic. You choose the video that is related, if there is any video. Like, for example, this one, it will be, you will find it here as a post after the session and the meeting ends. So you'll have it, but it expires after a week. So if it's important to you to revise it and go back to it, you will find it with another way, which is the YouTube. Okay. Now, what we'll do now is that we'll concentrate on certain things that I will post within the files here. I'm just showing you how to work on it. In the files part, you will see all the material that will be discussed, or that was the material that before. Okay, for example, last time we had here the plan, our plan for this course. We discussed this, and we had also a YouTube video that we listened to and discussed. So what we had, for example, the first lecture. Now also you can find here another material that will be, for example, what we'll take in this course for today. Okay. For example, today we'll discuss, we'll have a look at the website, okay? This website document here, I'll provide you with different websites to take an idea about the meaning of the course and how it is, for example, what is meant by culture and what is meant by thought. Can I hear from you, please, before I begin? What do you think? Culture and thought and philosophy. You can tell me. I would like to participate. Dana? Just one word from each. Dana? Okay, Muhammad or Ghassan?
Doctor, they were a lifestyle or a way of life for each.
Just introduce yourself, Muhammad.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
They're like a lifestyle of each period of life, like the Romans and the Greeks and the Ottomans.
Yeah.
Their own philosophy and their own ways. That's the way they lived. Yani that was their methods of living.
Okay, excellent. What do you think, Hassan? If you want to add. You agree with Muhammad?
It's a lifestyle for people.
What is it?
A lifestyle.
Okay. Dana? Dana? Okay. Now, let me begin with this. I think that it's very important and it's very easy here if you want to start with Wikipedia. As you know, Wikipedia is one of the sources here to go back. But of course, if you are aware of this, Wikipedia is not to be trusted as a source for scientific research. So you can, for example, if I ask you to introduce something or to have a look on it and to think about it, prepare it for next class, for example, you can go back to Wikipedia to take an idea as a background. Okay, and of course, I'm not saying that it's not all what is written on that page is not true, but I want you to be very specific in the way that sometimes part of what is written on Wikipedia is not scientific. Do you know why? Why isn't it is not trusted scientifically? For example, if you are making a research paper, and I do not accept that you put one of the references Wikipedia, although I'm looking at it now. What do you think? Do you have an idea, Muhammad or Dana or Hassan?
دكتورة إنه like Wikipedia gives you like the most basic and general information, but if you want to go
Can you
to
just,
deepen in,
before you start, each one please, everybody, whenever you want to say something, just introduce yourself because I cannot see who is talking.
okay, يعني أحكي
Yeah.
محمد.
Okay. Yes, Muhammad, please.
دكتورة إنه like Wikipedia just gives you the basic and like the most simple like information about the something you're looking for, but if you're going to look in deep, you have to find a source that like is specific in that like major or whatever you want to look into.
Excellent. One thing else is that everybody can make an edition or may edit what is written. For example, you yourself, if you make an account on Wikipedia, you can edit. You see here, you have read, edit, and view history. Okay, so you can edit. For example, if you are reading this paragraph and you know that there's something new, for example, or something that is not right discussed here, you can add to it. Okay, of course you will take the permission and you write to them and add to that, which means that some people now, I don't guarantee what you are writing. Maybe your edition is not the right part. Maybe it's wrong what you are talking about or what you are saying. Maybe this is misleading, or maybe you are doing it to make kind of violate or harm the information, or make kind of any kind of try to illustrate it in a different, maybe you have grammatical, for example, problems, or the edition is not accurate in spelling or whatever. Usually this depends on people, on human beings. So and it's not there's no revision. Okay, so of course it should be done with revision, but usually it's not this way. This is why don't trust anything that you read on Wikipedia. It just gives you an idea to start with, and then you have to go deeper and search other materials. But I would like really, yes, please, Muhammad.
Ghassan, يعني you say anyone can write in Wikipedia? Anyone can write.
You can edit. You can edit, yes. And I, for example, if you edit something on the material that you have here, I can, for example, go and say, no, what Ghassan is saying is wrong, and edit in another way. Now, all these people will be giving their ideas on this, let's say, platform, and the Wikipedia, as a company or as a platform should decide which one is right. So sometimes, and they ask you, please, if you know anything to edit, please do give us feedback on that. So again, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but part of it is not completely accurate. Okay, so just take it as if you are reading a newspaper to take an idea before you go to a meeting or before you go to in depth in research. But now just let's start with the Western culture. For example, the Western culture here, see that it is merged into an article. So you can, for example, I can merge it with an article. This is accepted. Here you can see, for example, what do you see here? What do you see here? You can tell me. Leonardo da Vinci, right? Why is it put here? For example, in this article, when we talk about Western culture.
أنا محمد دكتورة.
Yes, Muhammad.
Because he was like one of the founding fathers of like
Exactly.
Western culture.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we want to discuss Western culture, we'll take different examples, okay? And one of the main examples to be followed and to be, studied here, and in different areas. For example, not only in art. For example, Leonardo da Vinci is known in human arts, in philosophy, and also in science, geometry, and many different fields. Also in you can find it, for example, in science dealing with so anything that's related to soldiers and army and so on. So different researchers were done through Leonardo da Vinci. So you can take an idea of the Western culture through this or his eyes, let's say. So let's go back now. What is Western culture? As you can see, there is what is called Western civilization and Occidental culture, or what we call, of course, the Western world. Now, in Western culture, we are talking about the Western world here, and we are thinking about it in another perspective if you compare it with the Eastern world. So as if we are thinking about the world as divided into two parts, Western and Eastern. Of course, this is one of the ways to look at it, but in philosophy. And here we are thinking about European civilization mainly when we talk about Western and Europe. When we discuss civilization, of course, see the words here. We were talking about culture, and then we are talking here about civilization. Now, what's the difference between culture and civilization? What do you think? When do I say this is culture and this is civilization? This question is very philosophic. One of the fields that is related to English as a language, or languages in general, not only English, is the philosophy of language. Okay, the philosophy of language. And the philosophy of meaning, and this is what the part of science which is linguistics. I'm sure that you heard of this term before. Linguistics deal with. It deals with terms and the meanings of terms in certain contexts, and how they are specified and differ from one context into another, depending on different factors. Some of them may be historic, some of them may be demographic or psychological, or according to the region, geography, according to men view, and different ways of interpreting things. So this is what is meant by philosophy of language. Now, how is it related to culture and civilization? We cannot think, one of the major sayings in philosophy says that I cannot think of language without thought, which is, or the other way, vice versa, which is thought cannot be delivered without language. Okay, what do you think? What's your comment on this? Do you agree or not? Can I deliver thoughts without language? Or can I have language without delivering thoughts? What do you think? The two sentences here I raised are very philosophic, and some of the philosophers that we'll discuss later in this course talked about this. But just as a beginning, so as to introduce to you the culture and civilization terms and how different they are. What do you think? No comment? Okay. Anyone wants to participate? Muhammad, any idea? Can you think of language without thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, no, يعني شو اسمه, you need language to have thought. يعني how can you have a language without thinking about the language?
Yeah. What are you going to deliver as you know, if you have a message, okay, and you're
Yeah, of
using
course.
certain words?
You can't say gibberish if you don't think what you're about to say yet.
Exactly. This is why it's very important when you are taught from the beginning. If you are, let's say, children, when they teach them language, they say they should think in the language itself. This is why it's very difficult to teach people languages in in a later stage when they are grown-ups or adults, because they will find the difficulty, because they will be thinking in Arabic, for example. This is what happens in Arab, in your case, for some of you, of course, that you are a native speaker, Arab native speaker. So you speak in Arabic, you think in Arabic, right? Now, when you study or learn English, now you'll continue to, if you are born as a native speaker, an Arabic native speaker, you'll continue to think in Arabic, and then you will translate what you have in mind in Arabic into English. And this is what makes the kind of the mix and the problems that all students and learners of foreign languages find it as a problem. Now, what is suggested here, that you have to think of language as one of the basic we call tools to provide or to transfer messages and thoughts. Okay, messages are made of thoughts here. So I have a message, I have a certain idea, I have to convey it with a certain let's say set of words. Okay, and that's it. So I cannot think of language without thoughts. Now, what about the other idea? If I reverse it, can I have thoughts without language? What do you think? This is also a philosophical question. Thoughts without language. Is it possible? What do you think? Yeah, speak up, please. Let me hear your voices. What do you think? Hassan, what do you think? Or Dana? Can I have thoughts without language? No? Ahmed?
دكتورة برضه, no, it's like yin and yang. You need both to like انه الاثنين يكملوا بعض.
Okay, this is one of the ideas, or one of the theories that you are saying now, that they complement each other. But one of the philosophers, or some of them, they said, yes, you can. The second question that I posed, that you can have thoughts without language, they said, yes, we can. But that it is very specific. In what situations? It's one, for example, when somebody have through art, for example, through art and music. But even so, other philosophers, they said, no, even art and music, this is kind of language. Language is made of codes, okay? Made of codes. Codes may be, for example, numbers, as we can see in computer science. Codes may be signs or nota, if you know, if any of you know music, for example, or plays music instrument, you know that there is a special note or a code for musical notes. And if you are, for example, a painter or an artist, also as Da Vinci has done here, you can see that his or her thoughts are transferred as a message through art, through a painting, or through sculpture, for example. So yes, we can transfer our ideas and thoughts without speaking the language itself that is given in, for example, literature. Okay, and also the question is raised here: what about people who cannot talk or who have problems without that they cannot, for example, express themselves? Or people, or let's say people who are still not learning the language from the beginning. So do they don't have thoughts? So this is the field of psychology here also to be discussed. So I'm just giving you an idea that how related is language and thought. Now we want also to continue on this and to say the relationship between culture and civilization. Now, civilization, as you can see, is the heritage of social norms. So we are thinking about what we inherit. So unless it is inherited, you cannot think of civilization. And as you said before, we concentrate on social parts, which is the norms and habits, and ethical values, because each civilization may have different sets of values. For example, what is ethical or moral or accepted in our culture? For example, see here, I'm saying culture, but again, it's not, for example, accepted in others' culture. But I'm not saying civilization. So what's the difference between civilization and culture? What do you think? How can no, culture is the big word, right? If you want to think about the scope of the meaning, okay, you say culture, and under culture or part of culture is civilization. So what is civilization? It concentrates on what part? If I say culture includes social norms, it includes ethical values, okay? It includes tradition, it includes beliefs, it includes systems, different parts of systems, political or agriculture, or different, or maybe economic, okay? Now what is civilization? If that's culture, what is civilization? Any idea? Okay. Are not helping me. Let me tell you that civilization is part of culture, but it is that physical part. For example, if I'm talking about artifacts or about technology, okay, anything scientific applications, are buildings, for example, okay, this part is civilization. So I say Greek civilization when I think about, for example, their sculptures, or the way they have, for example, certain paintings, if I'm talking about the Arab civilization, for example, okay? So what I think of is something physical, material, rather than that spiritual part or social or ethical part, okay, or belief, for example. So they complete each other, okay, the civilization and culture. But again, as I said, civilization, for example, concentrates on the physical part, the material part of that culture. Of course, I cannot think of culture in the Arab world without thinking of, for example, mosques. without thinking of certain paintings by, for example, what we say, philography, الخط العربي, for example. Okay, so we have certain things to think about that are material, that are related to civilization, and that is part of culture. While culture concentrates on not on technology or buildings, it concentrates rather on the social part. Okay, that's the main difference. Now, of course, when we say European, Western, what does it include, the word Western? If I say Eastern and Western, okay, what do you think about when you say Eastern and when you say Western? What does it include?
دكتور أنا
Yes.
إنه
Yes,
Eastern اللي قصدي الويسترن اللي هو يعني مثلا like America like Canada وهدول like the Western culture, like you think of like the cowboys and the churches and all that, like their lifestyle, you go back to their lifestyle. Eastern اللي هو احنا يعني مثلا زي ما انت حكيتي like mosques, Saharas, deserts.
Okay, so now Muhammad is talking about, if you realized, some stereotypes that all people, when you think about desert, so you see this is the Eastern, right? This is what he said. Although you can have other desert forms in Western civilization, but this is the way it is written in literature. This is why we say we have, for example, classical music, so that's Western. That's not in Eastern civilization or culture, see? So we have classified our thought, our minds, okay, the human being, our minds, is working in a way of classification of everything, okay? And that classification makes what we call the stereotype way of thinking. So if I say, for example, strong, I say man. I don't say woman. This is the way Arab people think. And of course, this has to be redefined because this is wrong, okay? But again, this is the stereotype way of thinking. We want to think, to rethink it, okay? There's a term called rethinking. It's like revisiting, okay? To think again about certain facts that you think that they are right, but maybe they are not. So we have to revisit the idea. Now, to conclude, we say that it's divided here between West and East. So the globe is, this is the way some thinkers thought about it, that the globe is divided between West and East, which is we and others, or me and other, okay? And how we think about their heritage or their culture and their civilization. Now, when we talk about civilization, it's clear, it's there, you can see it. There's very, very clear facts, and maybe something specific and physical you can see in front of you that you cannot deny. But when you talk about culture, here comes the discussions and the dialogues and the dialectic way of thinking, that maybe this is not true, or maybe they are saying something that is false, or it's misleading, or they have a point to mislead us, or so on and so on. So always try to think here critically, let's say critical thinking, that what you see in the Western culture does not mean that we don't have it in the Eastern culture, but we have certain stereotypes that made us say this is Western and this is Eastern. So if I'm listening to music, symphony, I would say this is Western, right? You agree? You agree or not? What do you think? If I'm listening to...
Yes, Doctor.
Yes, Dana? symphonies are only limited to Western culture and civilization?
Yes.
No, you know, how can I judge that? Who tells me? How can I judge that? Whether my result is right or not? Who judges? What do you think? I know this is this, you know, course is very difficult sometimes because we are talking about something philosophic, but it's very interesting when you think about it. Now, I judge that depending on certain things. Number one, the facts. I'll go back to history and see who have symphonies in history. Okay, is it Western civilization or the Eastern? Now, if I, for example, if I realize, let's say, just you know, just a guess, if I realize, for example, that there is a proof, okay, a proof that says the Eastern culture, in the Eastern civilization, we used to have something like a symphony, okay? So at that, depending on this point, I will say, I have to say what? That this is a stereotype, because no, you cannot say limit it only to the Western culture or civilization. So we have here certain disambiguities in this concept based on, you know, demography. What's demography? Demography and ethnicity. Demography is related to what? To places, to geographic places, with that related to people in such places. Okay? Why ethnicity depends on, you know, the as you can see here, the communities and the origins, and of course immigrations affect that ethnicity. Now we have different classifications of Western civilization. Some people say we have, of course, the classification depends on what? On the different geographical, let's say, places here. If we are talking about the Greek, the Roman. Now, some people relate the word Western to, for example, Christian culture. Is that right or not? What do you think? Is it right to say that all Western civilization is Christian in culture, or there is no relation?
No, doctor, there is relation, but that's stereotyping يعني إنه
Yes.
you can't base it on, because even إحنا Middle East we have a long Christian heritage too.
Excellent. Yes, that's it. So here we have to concentrate on how do I define culture? How do I define people here? Is it based on their race, their geographic places, their ethnicity, their religion, their, you know, you see? So it depends on how you are classifying them. Now, if I'm saying it in a way that is scientific, that to prove that it began there in their area as in geographically speaking, yes, it is accepted. But it doesn't mean when I say the Christian culture, for example, you know, some of the books in Arabic literature, they proved that we have, for example, here in Jordan, let's say, most people were Christian before Islam, which means Christian people were voted here in Jordan, in this specific geographical place, before Islam was spread. But we refer to the Eastern civilization here, right? Right? So you cannot say all Christian cultures refer to Western. Now, what I'm saying here is one of the major issues that were discussed, that you can see discussed in different books, in different through different, you know, articles on media. Nowadays, even in social media, you can see it. Okay, so you have to know to grasp the idea and to be very careful what is meant by that. And I'll give you one of the very important characters, who is called Edward Said. I don't know if you heard about this name. You heard about this name, Edward Said, who saw that he talked about. Yes, okay. He have a very important thing that's called istishraq. We'll talk about it in other sessions later. But this is the idea that how to classify things according to Western or Eastern views. Of course, also when we say Western, we discuss, for example, the Greek civilization. We'll talk about issues like democracy. We'll talk about certain different eras. For example, in Greek culture, we talk about Hellenistic. Now, of course, each era or each period here covers certain, sometimes era of time and a certain place, or where it depends on where the empire was spread. Or, for example, if I talk about the Greek here, sometimes it's according to the place. For example, the Eastern Mediterranean or the Near Eastern. Okay, we say طبعاً it depends on also religion, as you said, Christianity, and we sometimes we refer to Testament. We have in Christianity. I don't know if you know that in Christianity we have the Old Testament and the New Testament, which is the Bible, two parts, the Old and the New. The Old was referring to the Jewish people, and the New for Christian people. And of course, the Christian believe in the Old and the New together. So maybe some people say the Testaments also which is religion, part of culture. And of course it is, because as I said in the beginning, thinking and thoughts, it's all part of culture. And also I said that we cannot think about it without language. This is why, for example, Islamic people or Islam thinks people in Islam think that, for example, Quran is written in Arabic, and this is very important. That this is one of the languages to be spread and have certain, let's say, effect that is very important on literature, and in how efficient it was written. Now, in Old and New Testament, which is the Bible, also it reflects. It was written in a language, and that language makes the ideas more clear. For example, in that at that time. This is why when we have a translation, it's very important to understand history, to understand the context, to understand demography, and to know how this may affect or certain, for example, historian affects how this may affect the language and the apprehension of it. Okay, for example, you will see, if you talk about Western, you have to know the Roman history and Roman Empire, also the Greek and East and Latin West. Okay, and the churches we have different kinds of churches. For example, the Latin Church, and we have also even law, or as you can see here, legal part is, or what we say, the legal tradition. For example, the Greek were known with philosophy, while Roman were known with law. Okay, so the Western law is taken from Roman rather than the Greek. So it's the Roman law that is imposing, for example, till nowadays. For example, here in Jordan, our law is taken from French. Part of it is from French, and part of it's from Egypt. And that part from Egypt is also taken from the French culture. And now, as I'm telling you here, that the French part is taken from the Roman. This is how the Roman law was imposed till now. Okay, because at that time we have certain people that were very known and famous. for example, in the Renaissance era. Okay. Now, if we go back to, for example, this example, as I told you, we have different examples. When we talk about culture and civilization, we think about art, we think about literature, we think about technology, if we are talking about civilization, science, okay, that's civilization. When we say people are civilized, which means that they have certain, results because of the scientific approach. Okay, for example, here Leonardo da Vinci has spread his ideas about the human portion or proportions. Okay, and this is all people studying geometry, they refer to him as one of the very, very important models discussed. But now Da Vinci here is taking it from what? From the Roman, as he is a Roman architect, and taking it from another idea or another book from that, as you see here, it's a treatise de architecture, which is architecture, okay, in English. Now, another example is what we have or what we see as philosophers. And if you think of philosophy, you have to think about what? Greek. You cannot think about philosophy without referring that to the Greek, Greece and Greek people. For example, Plato, Aflaton, okay, is well known with Socrates or Socrates, as you know him, and Aristotle, which is Aristo in Arabic. They are all Greek philosophers that are known in with their different areas. Each one of them is known in different area. For example, if I think about Plato is one of the ancient Greek philosophers, and there's a school of philosophy that is related to his mind or to his thinking. We call it Platonic or Platonist school. الأفلاطوني نقول التفكير الأفلاطوني, okay, Platonist school. And this way of thinking, this method of thinking, made him able to examine different, higher learning steps later on, and that was taken later in the Western world. Okay. That's an example. Now, if we go to Socrates, for example, Socrates, he is one of the, Greek philosophers also. And as you can see, he is from Athens. In Greek, we have different areas. We have mainly Athens, okay, and Sparta. Athens and Sparta. It was divided into two major parts. Now, in Athens, Sparta was known for military terms and soldiers, while Athens is known in philosophy and thinking and dialogues. So Socrates, we say it's known that he is the founder of Western philosophy, and as I told you, the philosophy itself, the foundation of philosophy is built in Greek culture and civilization and history. So he is the founder of everything. Even if nowadays we say it's well known that even Islam philosophy is part of it. Philosophy, I'm saying, not religion. Part of it is taken from Greek philosophy. Actually, because in our era, our Arab and Islam, they thought that it's very important to translate, and the translation here was very important, and they worked on it. So I think this would that helped a lot in imagining and rethinking about the world. Now, and we have what we call dialogue, Socrates dialogue, or what we say in Arabic al-Jadal al-Socrati, if you heard about it. Jadal al-Socrati, it refers to his way of making dialogues continue. Okay, and then we have another very famous, philosopher who is Aristotle. He's also a Greek, and he worked on different, parts of science, mathematics, also geometry, arts, and thought art, philosophy. He was taught by Plato, and Plato is let's say, he's like a teacher to him, and he was a scholar of Plato, and at that time, he was the founder of Lyceum. This is the idea of having schools and also universities. It began at that time. So the School of Philosophy was given, or it was built at that time, and all the writings and in different branches was given of course, of knowledge was given starting with Aristotle's school, let's say. And from that time, at that time, the Western philosophy, let's say, was introduced. So it's part, and after that, of course, we talk about the Middle Ages. I'm just giving now a briefing of everything here to take an idea. When we talk about religion, we have Orthodox Church, we have Catholic Church, we talk about the Judaism, which is the old Bible. All this is reflected after the ancient Greece, of course, and in the Middle Ages. And here comes or appears a special or specific term, which is the Renaissance. Now, when we talk about the Middle Ages, here we are concentrating on the 5th to the 15th century. So it's a very big, let's say, period of time and era. But mainly it was, here the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And after that, in the age of discovery, we have what we call the Renaissance. And this is one of the paintings by, for example, that you can see here, the major paintings that was very famous in the period of Renaissance, which was, as you can see, it's in Europe history, and it marks or makes it clear the transition into or from Middle Ages. Okay, so at that time, as it is called Renaissance, it's where we have all great changes in different areas of knowledge, in knowledge in all its fields, especially in arts. Okay, so it's very famous, this period. Of course, we have also rationalism. Rationalism is also part of philosophy. We say to depend on your mind and thinking critically, and to depend on knowledge. This is the epistemological point of view, which is referring to knowledge as the main justification for everything, and that's the rationality of it. So they neglect, or they refuse methodology in theory. And what's methodology? Methodology, here they define it as a methodology of theory, of course, in various areas. And we have the scientific method that we are using nowadays. So the Western, this introduces how a scientific method goes back to the Western or scientific, let's say, root, which is based on rationality, okay, and critical thinking and scientific revolution. It helped in this, in the age of what we call Enlightenment. So we have two words here. We have Renaissance and Enlightenment. Now, Enlightenment, it was again an intellectual, philosophical movement. You can see it. It's different in timing. Okay, it's from 17th to 18th century. So now, when we talk about the European society, we think about Christianity, we think about Renaissance, all the influence of this on civilization thought. Now, on the other hand, we think about it as influencing our world, the Eastern and the Islamic world, because here, course, some people they don't prefer to say it's the Islamic word, because if you say the Islamic word, that means that you can accept saying the Christian word. Okay, so here there's kind of let's say some people say there's bias and it's not accepted to define the word according to religion. What about people who don't believe, for example, atheists or polytheists? What about them if they don't believe in one a God, for example? So if they don't really believe in certain let's say religions. So here, this is why some people believe that culture should not be divided or thought of in terms of religion. Although we see it, okay, we see it in writings and in literature, in history, because history is written by people and literature is written by people, and it's you or him or her who define what is to be given or written, because the thinker puts that within certain words using certain mentality and rationality, and they have their certain stereotypes, of course. Again, here we are talking about the influence of when we talk about Islamic word, we think about translations and the influence of way of thinking. For example, we translate in the Islamic world, if we accept this term, in the Arab history, lots of things were translated from Greek into Arabic, or from Roman into Arabic, from Latin into Arabic. But don't forget that the Arabic, Arab people or historians or writers from our, culture, they have their own, let's say, things to depend on. For sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's history, sometimes it's the idea of power and how we should rule and concentrate rather than let them continue with their ideas. Here comes the idea of clash and acceptance and tolerance to have dialogue. This is why we find that translation is very important as one of the main routes to build bridges between different cultures. Translation is easy for us. As I told you, the different views of others, how they differ from us is very important, because we may complete each other, right? We complete each other. Now that's the, let's say, the Islamic world, and when we talk about the Islamic world here, we go back to a very important word, which is the Andalus or Andalusia, and because it's the conqueror of the Islamist state in that at that time, in geography, in history, it all affected till now Spain and what we have in Spain, and from literature, from, if we talk about art, sculptures, buildings, you can see the Arab and Islamic effect on that. Of course, Latin translation is very important. The Arabic texts that are translated. Now, when we concentrate in the Arabic literature, we have to concentrate to differentiate between literature and science. So mainly we are still, of course, using English as a language for science, and we are using which language for philosophy? Do you know? We say if you want to teach science, it's better to teach it in English, right? This is what is known. And for philosophy, which is the language? What do you think? You know, depending on what I've said now. It's Greek.
دكتورة English برضه. هو Greek الأصل.
Yeah,
Greek
of
mythology.
course. Right. Right. English is now, of course, the all, as you said, you're right. English is the language, let's say the universal language now. Okay, we agree it's universal because it helps in all translations. It is scientific, very scientific. But if you want to go to the roots and the history and all the literature backwards, it was written in Greek. Okay, and then translated into other languages. Roman and English that is derived from the Latin. Okay, of course, the Arabic language is not one of those languages of philosophy, but it is the language of religion, Islam. Okay, and this is very argumentative, of course. Now, some people say that philosophy nowadays is more progressing with the language of German. Okay, German. Taken as a very important language for philosophy. For example, some people say if you wanted to study literature, go back to French, okay, study French as a language. So different views, of course, they are argumentative and different reports and scientific studies are written on that. Now, you'll see that it talks in this topic we talk about the Italian Renaissance, the Greek scholars, in different empires, at different times. Now, nowadays, in modern literature, and we talk about not only literature, we talk about science, we talk about economics, we talk about law and politics. Okay, even international law, and here we see different cultures. For example, if you go back to one of the major political pluralistic, let's say, method, we have pluralism. If you want to think about it as countering individualism. Now, individualism, it's concentrating on your moral, and political philosophy. So when we talk about individualism, you think about life, okay, leftism and rightism, and communicator. You think about communication. You think about individualism. So it's from a certain specific point of, let's say, way of thinking that goes back to the inner part, to the self-reliance, to the individual himself. While when you talk about let's say pluralism, and this is very important now, you talk about different views, different political philosophies, different how we can peacefully coexist with others and accept others, different convictions, different lifestyles. So the world now is turning from what used to be as individualistic into progressing into pluralism, not only in political wise, in all forms of knowledge, let's say. Till we reach what we call nowadays in our new age or new era, what we call globalization. Okay, and here we have a certain, let's say, a view, a new view or trend to work on or to think about, which is the process of globalization, which is interaction between all people within the globe and the different companies and governments. When you say globalization, you think about economy, you think about even politics affected by economy, geography affected by economy, and even different, nowadays you cannot think about, for example, communication and telecommunication without thinking about globalization. And even here, that term, that we have a citizen who is global. This is a very important term. A global citizen is emerging now into the world, in addition to the citizen or the nations itself, the nation itself. That, of course, makes it easier for people to, have a human migration and to have different, thinking about the way they rethink about their lives, let's say. So I want you to I will leave this page. I'll put it for you to have a look on it. Okay, I already did. Of course, I will be also asking Dana, please, Dana, right? Dana, to, for example, whatever we discuss here, please go back and see. Maybe something is related to it on YouTube. You can take it and post it on our group, which is the Western Thought and Culture. Please, I want you to also to communicate with Dana, because we already had a WhatsApp group for you to continue and work on, so as to make it easier to work together. By this, I finish and end this today's class. Is there any question you would like to ask me? Yeah? Yes, please.
دكتورة اسأل المادة بشكل عام، يعني هلا رح ندرس اللي عطيتينا اياهم هلا